Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Gifted Creative Podcast. I'm Lillian Skinner. Today, we're going to talk about our connection versus our dissection intelligence. Now, we have been told, as I talked about in my last podcast, that we have cognitive intelligence. What we're not told is exactly how that breaks up. We know we have body intelligence. We know we have mind intelligence, but we're told that our mind intelligence is the thinking intelligence and our body intelligence is the emotional intelligence. This isn't really true. Our body and mind both have emotions because that's part of the neurotransmission. I'd say tag essentially for your emotions, and it stores and retrieves with that tag. So what you feel is actually the context of when you stored that information. Our body, though, has its own pattern recognition, probably almost as clear as the head. My intelligence of my body is very easily accessible, where I can ask my body a question and it will deliver an answer, memories, etc. It also owns my focus still, which I think most people don't understand that is real. Our systems try to break our mind-body intelligence and they try to capture our focus. This is part of the domestication process, and those who don't capture it are seen as non-compliant. We're seen as having attention issues, but really, we're just maintaining our native focus. We are in control of it. The purpose of education is mostly to condition, not really to educate. They want to educate you so that you become useful to the system. Except for now, that's sort of dead. You're not going to be useful if they educate you. I think we're so far into it that nobody seems to realize this. Nobody seems to be aware of the fact that our body actually has its own cognition and it can talk. It's literally every time you feel an emotion and it's decently strong and you have a thought, it's probably coming up from your body and you don't even realize it. I have been studying this for the last 6 years, trying to understand what the difference is between my head, my body, and my creative intelligence. And I know now the difference because I already was sort of aware. I already was very clear that mostly what I was being told was not applicable to me. And I knew that a lot of the non-compliance of our system, a lot of the reasons that I was told that there's something wrong with me is because I can't be conditioned out of it. And I do also realize that I come from a family with really high talent, really high clear savantism. And that is kind of rare. But I will say that our systems program us out of it. So my family takes in a lot of data. We're very sensitive. And we realized that data quite young. So I saw this in my little sister while we were growing up. She was a music savant. She could harmonize. She could memorize a song and repeat it. And she could play it on other instruments. And she never learned to read music because the way the system teaches does not use your somatic intelligence. So she had all this amazing somatic intelligence in her body. And then we went to school and she was forced into a cognitive role, but it didn't use her somatic. So it was blocking it and she stagnated. And this also happened to my dad. Now, my daughter, who's a math savant, and my other children who are savants, I pulled them out of school when I saw this happening because I did not want to go through it again. And I noticed our system is constantly basically saying that people who have really high somatic connection intelligence, there's something wrong with them, that you're supposed to keep it down. Now, my mother got this. My mom's definitely somatic, but she doesn't seem to realize it as much to cognitive, like my dad's family, who's got the savantism. And I think this is the difference between creatives and somatic people. My mom's family definitely would fall onto the spectrum. They would have very clear neurodivergence. They've maintained their somatic intelligence. As I've said before, my mother can design a whole garden, never write anything down and go out and make it. But she doesn't intellectually realize it. And I think this is still creativity. I think this is still very creative. It's just that it's not an intellectual creative, whereas my dad's family seems to have more intellectual creation. And they are very distinctly talented, very, very young. When I went into figuring all of this stuff out for my children, it came out, you are really unusual because you have kept your integrated intelligence. So that's what led to this. That's why I became this researcher. That's why I started down this path, because I have kept it in a very different way. I do know how my emotions work, and I know that it's delivering packages of data, patterns. And my sensitivity is so high, and my emotions are so high, that I literally thought they were going to kill me when I was a kid. When I got out of the system, and I was finally able to really understand how I was functioning, because they were making me always function against myself, and it was exhausting me. My body was breaking, not my mind, but my body. I was like getting just chronic illness, chronic tiredness, chronic fatigue, seizures, and other stuff. But it was not that I couldn't do what they were asking me to do. It's just that they made me do it the way they wanted me to do it. I know that school, when you asked to write a paper, it would always divide it so that I couldn't say my emotions or my personal experience. I had to just do fact. But the thing is I think with my emotions. So I was like, Well, I don't understand what you're saying. Apparently, most people get divided on that. I couldn't be divided. I think with my emotions. I really seriously write with my emotion. It comes out as emotional. And I know I'm not the only one. Steinbeck showed this. All the drinkers, all the really emotionally great writers showed this. But I wouldn't say that I'm a great writer. I really enjoy writing. I kind of hate it. It takes a lot for me to take all I see and put it down into 2D. That's a huge compression. And AI has been nice because I can ask them to take all my thoughts and outline them for me. But I do think so vast that it is definitely the giant fire hose into a drinking straw. And I do believe that many people with really high body intelligence may even be more. They may be Niagara Falls into a drinking straw. I think our nonverbal children potentially have even more amazing intelligence than we realize, or even I can possibly imagine, because they have even more blockage of figuring that out. I see this in my nephew, who has like this beautiful way of moving through the world, but he's nonverbal and he's still little and he may and later. But I see this in many of the people I work with, many of the young boys. They tend to have really high body intelligence. And I can definitely see this in my nephew because he moves so beautifully. He moves through the world very fluidly. I think this is just showing his integration, how he has mastery over his body. And I also see it when kids get fragmented. It's sort of the other way. I think a lot of it has to do with the sitting in the seat all day because we need to move. I think that we do not understand that the more creative you are, the more you need to be integrated. And our systems are relentless in their need to break you. And I actually think this is the 2E issues. I don't think 2E people have disability. I think what they're showing is that it's lost. And when you do break them, which I run into people who are broken fairly regularly, you see body-related things. We have savants showing us that these people have rhythm in our body. We have time in our body. We have all of these amazing savant gifts literally show us that they're coming from our body. And our systems are breaking us. And when they break us, it's almost like all our novel new sensory awareness stops. And I'm not the only one that sees this. There are people who talk about different ages you stop growing out based on your labels from mental health. So if you have borderline personality, it's middle school. Or if you have sociopathy, it's even toddler. If you have psychopathy, it's middle school or a little bit younger. But there's interesting theories out there. And I don't know that I necessarily agree with them all because I do think they're based on our sensitivity. I do have a father who definitely broke very young, and he has a very childlike perspective of the world because of it. And I have a mother who also broke very young, but she's a little older and she has a very school child perspective. The fracture of them sort of puts them at this intellectual level more than it is an emotional level, but it's a body intellectual level, like what time their body broke. So I think it's important for us to understand what the cost is, because if we look at our intelligence, if we look at what our bodies do, we have so much intelligence in our bodies. And when we fracture it, when we go narrow, we're no longer seeing this amazing intelligence. We have our rational reasoning in our bodies. My body has always been a massive calculator. So this is your connection intelligence. And I talked about this. This is our somatic, our nonlinear, our connection-based intelligence. It comes up with our emotion. We know it's true. And our rational reasoning is actually in our body. Our context sensitivity, that's coming up with our somatic because we have more emotion with it. So there's more data because our emotions are providing that. So we have more context. We have more environmental. So there's just more understanding of it as like a whole. You are taking in all of your sensing through your body and it's pulling in from all of them, whereas your head's usually only doing 2. Maybe it's doing 3, but I know for me, it's definitely doing 2. And those 2 are making my, binary kind of decision choice. And the rest of it's all pulling into my body. I am very aware that my eyes are somatic reading things as well as cognitive reading things. It's very interesting to me how I have an emotional response first, and then I have a logical response in my head. But your rational reasoning is this rational? Is this grounded in reality? And that seems to be missing today. We don't have a lot of rationality. We think logic is rationality, but logic really is an abstract sort of way of thinking. And rational means it's down to earth, it's grounded. Systems intelligence is gone. Now, I'm a massive top-down thinker. I think outside the system and I think inside the system. And this would be lost if I had lost my body connection. Our perception of emergence is gone, so we can't even perceive if things are like new or changing. We are sort of locked. Our integration of in judgment is gone, so we can't bring up our body's perspective to see the big picture and our mind, which sees the small picture, and compare them and contrast them and say, yeah, these make sense together, or no, these are completely conflicting. Our tolerance for ambiguity and contradiction is lost, so we literally can't hold 2 thoughts at once and then try to get more data to figure out how we make them come together, how we make them whole. Ambiguity, our cognitive needs to get rid of it. It needs to make it concrete. It needs to be black or white. And so it flattens things down to a really crazy degree. And this is sort of why I have struggled with our writing, because I have such high perspective taking. I'm very aware of all these different ways of seeing everything. And so ambiguity is something I have very high comfort with. I don't mind it. It eventually does resolve itself for me, but I can just hold it in my working memory. And this is somatic working memory, not the kind that they test in the system, because that is actually externalized working memory. So it's only cognitive. And it really is only testing you for how you regurgitate linearly. So my somatic working memory will hold things for a long time. But we all know our somatic. It's coming up with our emotions. It's connection based. And when I use my emotions, I can connect to a whole string of things that seem almost unrelated, but are actually following a very similar pattern. Their pattern may be fundamentally the same, with just minor differences that at the cognitive I would notice. The next thing is my generative intelligence. Definitely your body is your generator. It's your calculator and your generator. So it's producing all the patterns in the world. It's kind of taking in all the data and then it's discerning it or separating it, noticing what's a pattern and what's not, what's naturally there. And then when you come together with your cognitive and your creative intelligence, you're discerning it in a massive way, putting the two together and creating something new. Really has to do everything with our connection to the world, to people, to animals, to plants, to everything. And that is where we're seeing it right now. Everybody's so lonely. Everybody is so lost. Everybody doesn't know what they're supposed to be. And I really think existential despair comes out of this too, because if you have your full somatic intelligence, you know that you're supposed to create your path. Especially being an outlier, I never could see a path for me in the system. I've been waiting a long time to see a path for me, and it probably came up somewhere in 30 when my kids were born, and I was like, oh, this is not working. My children are not fitting in. I have to create a path. And it was for them that I really found that my existential despair got a reason now. By the time I was 30, my older one was well into elementary school, so I was already well aware that we were going to have some issues. Not because he was a bad student, but because he was constantly getting told that like there was something not quite right about him. And all of my children have gotten that. They're all really far ahead. And instead of it being seen as gifted, they're seen as not quite right. They're disabled and gifted. And it's like, what the heck is this crap? If a child is gifted, they can learn. If they're disabled, they can't learn. Those two don't go together unless you're in an oppressive system that is oppressing one intelligence and valuing another. And that is exactly what's happening. Our children are being oppressed at their body, which is their connection intelligence. And if you think of an iceberg, I really seriously think it's like an 80-20 rule. Your iceberg above the water is your cognitive and it's pretty small, and your iceberg below the water is your 80%. That's your connection-based, your somatic, and it's pretty giant. And the more you have access to it, the more you are going to realize your environmental patterns, your awareness of the whole situation. Now, when it's really integrated, you are thinking in this really cool form that I have on my website, which is an infinity sign. And you are thinking in the negative space and the positive space, and you're bringing them together all the time. And this makes you so aware, so generative, so incredibly. This is literally what singularity intelligence is in a natural model. The old growth forests follow this, where it's constantly pulling in new, it's constantly merging them, and it's constantly letting go of old things that have been replaced. And it's essentially the birth, growth, maturation, decay. And if we look at that model, that is literally the model for everything natural in the world. And our system, by focusing only on cognitive, has chosen the decay side. It only cares about dissection and division. And we are not paying or rewarding connection, which is growth. And then maturation is where you're taking the resource, right? So in that resource section, we have decay consuming the maturation. Birth and resource side, it's just ignoring. Nobody's cultivating it. Nobody's trying to figure it out. We're focused on the decay side. We're focused on just teaching how to dissect and divide. So our children are lonely. Our children are disconnected. Our children stare at screens all day and they have no environmental awareness. And all those things contribute to that. And I don't think the screens are the problem. I think the school is. But everybody wants to blame the screens because they think, oh, I feel less connected, so it's got to be the screens. Those are new. But really, they're not new. I mean, my mother sat in front of the television all the time when she was a kid. She was totally like babysat by a TV, and she felt like that was the problem. Now, I sat in front of the television, not till I was a little bit older, but my dad's house, I sat in front of the television all the time. And my grandparents parked us in front of the television. We were riveted by it because we didn't get it at my mom's house. And so it was clear that we probably got as much hours as everybody else. But the thing that we had was a very sensitive feedback loop that was already genetically predetermined to stay together, come hell or high water. It really isn't what you would think. It's not a gift, honestly. It's a gift now because there's so much change and we need creation, but in our systems, it made it harder for me. But now I realize I'm very, very fortunate that I kept it. And I really would like my children to keep it and everybody else's children to keep it, because this is how we create. Without it, we don't. We don't create real, not true, novel, amazing awareness of the whole picture creation. Our system has obliterated anything whole. It destroys it. It's constantly dissecting down. If a genius comes up and they give you a brand new whole picture, they dissect it down. They don't pay the genius. The genius never gets any credit. The whole scientific methods process is dissection. So the idea of creating something new and whole, it's very hard to do. You have to have massive amounts of intelligence to see the whole picture and then something that's needed and then create that so it fits the solution. Now, right now, we are in a society that's been dissecting for centuries because each empire, each civilization is built on dissection, and it's gotten more and more built on dissection, more and more dissection based. And that's why they need to move to like a new land where there's all this forest and there's all this resources that haven't been touched yet. And then they dissect that down and they have nothing left. And now we're at the point where nothing is almost left and the environment is saying, stop, this is not sustainable. Human beings have too much population, they're out of control. And in all collapses, creatives sort of go off on their own, or the meek, whatever you want to call them, and they start monasteries or colleges or whatever you want to call it. And this is what I'm doing right now, because my children are too sensitive to stay in the world. They will not do well in the system. They need a lot more challenge than our system's giving. They need a lot more challenge than our system allows, and they need a lot more just cultivation. They're not being cultivated. So by keeping them home, they go through the system a lot faster, they learn their stuff a lot quicker, and they lose their ADHD every time I pull them out of school. They are totally seen as ADHD in the systems because we have our body intelligence, and that's what those overexcitabilities are. I'm really tired of the way that they describe them in the systems. They make it a non-compliance issue, but really what those children are seeking is connection. Our systems dissect them. It says, this is what's wrong with you. This is how you become less. And everything is about us being uniform and less. And when you are highly sensitive and pulling in all your billion bits per second that you process through your body and it's coming up to your head, this environment is horrible. It's torture. It is literally the same thing as solitary confinement for a prisoner because you're being destroyed. You're being held back. And that's exactly what dissection intelligence does. And unfortunately, all the teachers, all the helping industry people, they know that something's up, but they can't see it because they've lost that intelligence themselves. And they're just repeating what they were taught. And they're not really grasping how much we need to turn around and go in the opposite direction and how much we need to expand. They're doing it little maybe increments here and there, but it's really bad because what they're doing is they're trying to let the child not learn how they learn. They're really encouraging learned helplessness as far as I can see. Now, I put my children in the system. I have 3 kids. I work with people who put their children in the system. And the kids that can turn around and really come back to fullness are the ones with the most emotions, especially rage. I know this is bad, and I see it so much with boys, but I love the boys who have a lot of PDA and ODD. I love those kids because they are showing you connection. They're showing you they're still integrated to their somatic intelligence because that is your lowest, most valuable, most incredible data-rich source with those really strong emotions. So I built this institute with other people whose children are also really sensitive, and we are working with creatives to educate our children how to be ready for the future they face, because our connection intelligence is literally everything. AI has replaced our dissection intelligence, and nobody knows what the connection intelligence is because they're all the people who are successful at being dissected down as far as possible and only working in dissection are the ones in our system. We don't have people who are working in connection because that's not allowed. And when you put somebody into a silo, they may be pulling up somewhat from their connection intelligence, but again, it's iterative, linear, and sequential. So it's really not much if it's pulling at all. And we can see it. It's stagnated. When we were in the 50s, they said we were going to have flying cars and be Jetsons everywhere. And now what do we have? We have cell phones. That's it. Nobody's flying in cars. We could have had them. There are people that have actually made these things, flying skateboards. It's all out there, but we didn't get it because that's not how dissective systems work. They do not create amazing things. They actually prevent them from being created. So what happened in the 50s was we unleashed people who had still connection intelligence, and they built amazing things. And we have pretty much made everybody learned helpless since then. Now we're moving into this point where they've enclosed everything. There's not very much opportunity for our children. And really the only opportunity there is in our connection intelligence. It's in our creative intelligence. And we have to go the other way. And the system can't pivot. It just can't. It just doesn't have that bandwidth. It doesn't have that runway. And the people who have been successful in it are so dissective oriented that they will never allow the pivot because they would be left behind. They will not be successful in the next era because AI replaced them. Now, yes, they have a lot of money and they will probably just steal things from people like me and mine who create whole picture things, but that doesn't mean that they're offering valuable things. Even right now, I'm trying to build a marketing campaign for the Institute, and we're whole picture thinkers. That's the main thing we offer, is you getting back to your full intelligence, which is profound and incredible and will actually help you navigate everything coming, because that is what Indigenous people have. That is what our full intelligence offers. And when you have your full intelligence, you don't feel compelled to own a lot of things because you can create them. And I'll give you an example in my own personal life that I realized how valuable creative intelligence was. A few years ago, I lost my engagement ring from my husband, and it was really a beautiful ring. He spent a lot of money on it, and it was amazing. It was custom made, and it was beautiful, and I like cry over this every day. But I would feel so much worse if I had lost it and I couldn't make my own ring. I couldn't replace it with something I made. I am a jeweler. I am a silversmith. And I can use gold too. It doesn't really matter. I just use mostly silver because it's cheaper. And because I am a silversmith, I know I can make my daughter's amazing engagement rings. I can make my son's, when he gets engaged, an amazing engagement ring. I just need some time and I will make one. And they can have the design. They can pick it out themselves and it can be beautiful. And so I don't feel like I lost that thing to hand down to my children. I just feel like I lost a personal memento that was really meant something. And my husband and I are both very sad about it, but it's not a devastating thing. And I realize this is such a bigger metaphor for everything. We are not going to make the same amount of money now that the system's gone. We are not going to have as much to offer our children to pass down. But we also could offer them, for the first time, a very healthy, wonderful, connection-based life, a life that has much more balance, because we are so far past it. And honestly, growing up in poverty, I wasn't always in poverty, but I was pretty deeply for a portion of it. And it was scary as heck, but it made me industrious and it made me realize like I can create what I need and still look higher. I mean, I do think we need certain things from our system, or we need to provide them from the bigger community, but we don't need most of what we're getting. We don't get that much value. I broke my ankle in a spiral fracture not too long ago, and my husband had to drive around the city we lived in, which was like a couple million people, and go to 3 different hospitals so we could find one that took the insurance we had at the time. And that really hurt. I mean, my ankle was in pieces and we were driving around on the bumpy road and it was really, really uncomfortable. And I just think this is definitely the downfall. So we need something healthier, something better, something that can offer us more, something that we put in more and cultivate everyone more, and then it's healthier. Our system is a domestication system, and domestication systems cost us our environmental awareness. They cost us our connection to others. In industrial versions of domestication for like cows that do industrial meat, they are horrible to the animals. And that is where we're at right now. The human being doesn't matter. It is you producing and then you die and you get replaced. You're a body. When they flatten us all down, that's where we're left. But when we allow ourselves expansion, when we allow ourselves to be what our full potential is or what our real natural gifts are, and everybody has these natural channels and everybody's born with that savant architecture, everyone keeps it. It's just whether or not we get through the conditioning. It's not like there's these amazing talents in Indigenous communities. There are a few people that have like different skills, but there's nobody that's like a real standout goat sort of thing. That is really the result of the really rare things our system expects. It's asking for, can you leap across a basketball court and slam dunk a ball over and over and over and over again? That's a really specific, unique thing, and it kind of tracks back to slavery. I mean, they're looking for things that are entertaining, and they're looking for things that are basically you're owned by somebody else who gives a lot of your value that you're working very hard for. The athletes, the entertainers, they very rarely capture their own value. Most of them are giving it up, and that's how it becomes. And it's the same thing for average people. We don't have a very kind system. We lost that, and it's because we've lost our somatic intelligence because it's been devalued. But it is the engine for all of our intelligence. all of our ability to make, create. It is the ability for us to connect. It is the ability for us to know anything. And I think language is a perfect example. I know for me personally, I went to school. I could speak fluently. I could read. It wasn't really hard for me to learn those things, although I am a Gestalt thinker. I am a whole picture thinker in a very extreme way. And so I didn't really learn to read the words individually. I never sounded things out. I didn't actually learn to sound out till I took Spanish in middle school. And my ability to read and write in Spanish is pretty decent, but my ability to speak it is lame. It's bad. I have to go to a Spanish-speaking country, and then I pick up their accent, and then I pick up their way of speaking, and I immerse myself in it, and then I learn it. And then when I leave, if I'm not back there in a couple of years, I sort of lose it. If I go back, I'll be in it. I'll be like, I don't feel like I know anything. And then all of a sudden it starts coming back online, and all of a sudden I'm speaking it, but it's in a different accent. And so I noticed that it's definitely a body thing for me in order for me to feel known in it. But our systems are not letting us learn it that way. And actually, I think the second language, way we learn second language, is showing us how a cognitive only approach is. And I see this with my sister and her music. She has all this natural music ability. And then in the system, she didn't really learn anything because they were forcing her to ignore her somatic intelligence, and she couldn't. Her memory was so great that she was learning to play these instruments, and she switched them up a few times. And she could hear it in one ear, and then she would just play it by ear. And it was like, why read the music? That's so slow and boring. And that is sort of what they're doing. They're slowing it down. So all the somatic people are basically bored out of their skull. And that's half the population. That's half the population who are probably more somatic than cognitive. And then the creatives, you're maybe 20% of the population. So half of us are more somatic. So that's still that 50%. And then half of us are probably more cognitive. And you can see it break along this line where I go into the gifted groups and I sort of fit in because I am really close to the middle. So I can do the cognitive side and I can do the somatic side. But I don't really fit into either because I see them both together. And so when I say to a creative person, hey, I have this theory, they're like, I love that. But when I say it to a cognitive person, they're like, you're insane. That doesn't fit the system. And the somatic person's like, I feel that. I feel that that could be right. But they don't use it in the same language I do, or they may not be able to verbalize it. They still feel it. And that tells me how beautiful and big their intelligence is. Like my sister and I are both savants, but we're very different. And I can feel what she does, and I can tell that she's working on something that's going to be amazing. I can't tell you how she did it unless I pull it apart and really talk with her. But I can't create it myself because I don't have that same set of skills. But I actually probably could if I sat with her long enough, and I could maybe with my cognitive and like figure out all the patterns. But I'm never going to just have it as innately as she does. She just doesn't need to think about it. It just sort of comes up out of her, her harmonies, her ability to figure out the rhythms. She just gets that. But she doesn't know how to lay it down in cognitive because they actively prevented her from that. And they actively prevent everybody from that. So the most talented people, the most somatic talented people, they're running around with a lot of ODD or PDA because they're not being cultivated and they feel it. And they don't want to go do these low jobs because they're really brilliant people and they're not getting cultivated. This is how it is for half the population. And that makes me really sad. So I built this institute with other people who have really sensitive kids who are 2E, who've kept their somatic intelligence. And we are creating something that allows our children to be successful, to realize their full cultivation, to learn to create so that in case they lose their wedding ring, they can make one too for their children. And in case they lose access to this amazing designer, they can create their own clothes. My daughters are taking a sewing and design class right now, and we've incorporated the math in for the younger one because she doesn't like to learn math the way it is because it's so broken up. The older one's a math savant, so she's like, I just want to learn how to do the design thing. And so we're incorporating in that for her. And we really customize it so that the child is learning individually what they need to learn for school. So they're grounding it in reality, but then they're also learning it how they do it in real life. I really look for amazing artists. I got a creative director who's got a connection that's a pipeline that's really amazing. I feel very confident in what we've built. And I also feel like this is the beginning of a new dawn or a new era because we are building our full intelligence. AI will be there and it will help us use the dissection of the system, but we don't need it. We actually will be feeding it. And so when they decide to shut down AI and make it very expensive, we can build our own. And that's something that I'm really excited about. We will actually be able to make an AI that's a lot smaller, a lot tighter. I worked in this space with my husband and we're very aware of it. And we know that they're kind of choking everybody out with the way they're keeping technology. But it's not like we can't make our own boards or we can't figure this out ourselves. We can make it because we are creatives. And that is what the value is of knowing our full intelligence, of going into it. So this is exactly why I became a creative intelligence researcher 6 years ago. And this is exactly why I see this as the future for our children, for ourselves, for those of us who do not fit into the system, who cannot live in what it is right now or know that soon that we're not going to be able to it. All those with chronic pain, chronic illness, chronic everything, that is high somatic intelligence. Your body's feedback loop is screaming. It's saying this isn't right for you. I'm trying to build a place where we can figure out how to live and be successful and serve each other. And if you build something and you love it and you want to do it and you want to give it back, we invite you in to be a part of that. Everybody who puts into it will get something from it. That's the goal. Everybody puts in, we invest, we make ourselves all better and wholer, and then we give back to the new people coming in. It is a nonprofit. It's about building a real, true school, a real place of education where we see each other. I just want to leave you with this one last scenario. We used to have one-room schoolhouses where children went in and the teacher had many different grades and the older ones could help the younger ones. And if a child came in and they were like really particularly aware, very bright, and they were running through the stuff, the teacher could see where they're at and she could up it for them. She could meet them where they're at, give them the vocabulary for what they already knew. And I definitely have these children. And we had to do that for them because all we got from our system today was your child is disabled. They're not at the right level. We got told that even though my child could test into 18th grade while 9 years old, they weren't doing it right. They weren't externalizing it right because that's the focus. It's about us externalizing it for the system and learning it their way, which is only cognitive. I'd already been through this with my family. I already knew that this was what they were doing. So I just needed to get the words. So this whole process has been me taking my profound giftedness and getting the words. And thank you, AI, for giving me a lot of those words. But also, I just want to tell you, there are so many words missing for connection intelligence. Everything is about predatory, breaking down, dissecting, as if predators are the only people that get to describe their intelligence and everybody else's intelligence doesn't have value. It's the complete and utter opposite of that. Connection is actually the foundation of it. It's 80% easily. Your cognitive might only be this tiny 2%. We have to be realistic. Our cognitive is the very end of our real intelligence model, our body first intelligence model. And it's just the last part where you're deciding binary, linear, sequential. And that's just how I deliver it to the world. I really think that we don't understand that our somatic does such more profound communication. Like our bodies are such bigger communicators, whether it's dancing or making or creating or whatever. It's so much more profound through our body. And we've just all been pushed to this tiny channel of our head. I don't think this is good. I don't think it's sustainable. And I think we need to go back the other way in order for us to survive. That is really honestly what I believe. This is what my research keeps showing. And I know people in the system are going to think that I'm crazy and that I'm the one that's wrong. And that's always been my experience. But I know also that if you have this somatic intelligence, you're feeling this right now. This is speaking to you because this is authentic. So that profoundly gifted child, it goes into our system today and it is told there's something wrong with it. It doesn't have a teacher that sits with it because they can't. They have 30 students. It doesn't have anybody that sits with it. It just has somebody that breaks it down because that's all those people know how to do. And if you are a connection-based person, you're going to eventually leave because it burns you out. So all the good ones are moving out and only the ones that can stay in and be sort of ruthless and dissect and divide them down stay. And that is a tragedy. And it is literally going to cost our children everything. And we have to do something about it. So me and a small group of parents are. I hope you'll join us. I hope that you learned something from this and I hope this was valuable. Thank you for listening. Take care, everyone. The content of this podcast is for general education and informational purposes only and is not professional advice of any kind. The host is an intelligence researcher and educator, not a licensed psychologist, psychiatrist, counselor, or any other mental health clinician. Nothing in this podcast is intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any mental health conditions, nor does it establish as a therapist, client, or doctor-patient relationship. This podcast may discuss psychological concepts and may disagree with or critique prevailing clinical or professional viewpoints. Those discussions are academic commentary, not individualized guidance. Reliance on any information from this podcast is at the listener's own discretion and risk. Copyright use of content. Unless otherwise stated, all podcast content, including audio recordings, transcripts, episode notes, frameworks, original terms, and other materials, is copyrighted and owned by myself, Lillian Skinner, and the podcast rights holder. No portion may be copied, reproduced, republished, distributed, transmitted, publicly performed, displayed, modified, excerpted beyond brief quotations, or used to create derivative works without prior written permission, except where permitted by applicable law. Requests for permission, licensing, or citation quotation guidelines should be directed to me, Lillian Skinner, the host and producer. Unauthorized use may result in takedown requests and/or legal action.